Yes, it's Band on Band. Yep, another one. We're still going. We're still pumping out the content. Welcome back. How are you doing? Hope you're okay. Hope you're keeping safe. How was the pub if you went? Did you wear a mask? Don't worry. Different time, different conversation. On this week's episode, I chat with my very good friend Dave from Canada's finest math rock band, Golfer. We have a chat about another acclaimed math rock band, Colour. It's pretty good. Not gonna lie, Colour are great. You notice we talk at some points in the past tense. That's because Dave was enjoying the podcast so much, so much, that he just refused to record it so we could do it again. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Right, welcome back, everyone who's listening. Today on Band, I've got my good friend Dave from Golfer. How are you?
I'm well, Connor. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very happy to have you back for a second time, although no one will ever hear the first time.
They can hear your half.
We had a nice practice run a couple of days ago. I was very excited. Dave was so excited he forgot to record, but here we are. That's how it goes. That's how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
It might even be better this time. We'll see.
I think it will be. We've had a trial. Today on the episode, Dave and I are going to have a chat about the wonderful, now defunct, never coming back BSM band, Colour.
Rip Colour.
R.I.P. So, tell me about the first time you discovered Colour, or the three versions of which you believe you might have discovered Colour.
Yeah, I think it's like an even split between either MySpace.
A classic.
I think maybe it was like through scouring bands that I was into's top 8s and sort of like listening to everyone that they were kind of repping. So it was either through that, it might have been through a forum I was on called After the Post Rock. I was really active on this forum, and they had like a big post rock forum, but they also had a big math rock forum, and then within the math rock forum they had sort of like a math emo, math pop sub that I was really active on, and that's kind of how I found out about all my favorite sort of math rock bands at the time. This is like 11 years ago. But
yeah,
the third thing that I had like sort of proposed last time was through BSM, but that wouldn't make sense because Anthology hadn't been compiled yet.
No, it was just a bunch of EPs and singles.
It was sort of indirectly through BSM because TTNG was the first band of this sort of genre that I discovered, and then like went via BSM knowing that they had put out, you know, the early releases, and found out a bunch of other bands on the label through TTNG, but I don't think Colour would have been factored into like the bands I found through BSM directly. I think it was through this forum or through MySpace, but 11 years ago, it's all blurry.
Gone are the days of trolling through bands' top 8s just to find bands that you enjoy, or finding obscure bands that you can then tell your friends that you have been a massive fan of for years.
Colour are one of the few that I can really claim as like, you know, almost on the ground floor with them. Like I was listening to them while they were still active and while they were still releasing music. Or like right as they ended, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like that's when most people I know discovered them. A friend of mine, Ben Pollard, shout out the guy, he was telling me years ago when we were in our infancy of friendship that he went to their final ever show in Guildford, not knowing it was their final ever show, and just said it was a wonderful experience. What was it like when you listened to them for the first time? Knowing TTNG, did you think that Colour was more in your sort of musical interest, or was it something different that you enjoyed?
I think it was something a little bit different because, like I mentioned, I came to it really from this like explosions in the sky, Sigur Rós worshipping background. So, like that, I sort of made my way to math rock, into like poppy math rock through that. So it was like TTNG were still slightly more technical than Color were, like in a more like I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I feel like Color were a notch poppier than TTNG were, or like had less overt math influences. So I think it was really exciting for me. It was like sort of this brand new genre I was learning about, and it was like an appropriate push forward in the pop direction whilst still being like super technical and super impressive in that regard. It was like almost an even better mix of pop and technicality than TTNG was. And I still think, like, compared to like the Tube Lords and the Pennines and all those other bands I was discovering at that time, like just the best mix of like melody and songwriting, but also just crazy technicality, but very understated technicality, you know? So
I feel like that entire Kingston, Surrey, London scene from 2000 I want to say like 2006 to like 2012, maybe, like those 6 years. There was a plethora of bands that you could have discovered through that. Were you actively looking for something that was more technical but subtly technical, or was there any other bands in that time that you were enjoying from discovering Color? Probably.
I think it was like the whole spectrum. Like, I think when you're a teenager, it's like you're looking for the most wildly technical thing you can find to just like satiate that like boundary push. But at the same time, with these kind of like UK math pop bands, maybe coming from like a history of being into like, you know, Equal Vision Records, and my favorite bands being like Code and Cambria and Strictly Survive and Fall of Troy as a kid, you know, still, as much as I was sort of denying it in my late teens, like having that thirst for pop and melody and choruses and songwriting. Absolutely. And so I think those bands were like just this perfect middle zone. Those bands, or like some of the Sargent House stuff, like Maps and Atlases, it was just like, okay, I'm here on this big trip of like finding the weirdest, most technically crazy stuff I can find, but also deep down in my heart, you know, I'm a Equal Vision techie emo nerd, and you know, some of the best part of that music was how catchy it was and how great the melodic, you know, songwriting and choruses and all that kind of stuff was. So I think, you know, maybe listening to like Piglet and Termelos and Don Cab, whatever, was really fun and really just like super eye-opening. But then when I made the leap into the poppier stuff of that, it was just like everything I wanted sort of in one band. And I think Color really was like the apex of that, like everything I wanted when I was 19 in one band.
And everything you want now still.
Oh, absolutely. Like, absolutely.
Would you consider yourself a legend? Or even a friend? Would you consider yourself a friend of BSN? Maybe you'd consider yourself a family friend of BSN. Well, do we have the goods for you? If you peep over at our website, bsnrocks.com, you'll see up in the little top corner there, Family Friend. You guessed it, that's our subscription service. But hold on, no. It's not like Netflix, it's not like Spotify. Don't you worry about it. It's not going to come out of your bank account at a predetermined date every month. It is free. Yes, that's right, £0, 0 pence, $0. Completely free. Takes 2 seconds to sign up and you get access to a whole heap of exclusive content, discounts, test press raffles, probably some videos coming soon, probably some exclusive music coming soon. I don't know, I'm not going to give the game away. So just sign up, think about it later and enjoy the ride. But just let us know that you're having a good time, because that's all we care about. Back to past me, talking about music.
As a bass player yourself, what was it that drew you to that band? Was it the rhythm section, or was it more of a melody bass vocals, harmonies, lyrics?
It was both. It was both in a really profound way. Like, like I said, songwriting melodies were incredible, but especially on those last 6 songs on Anthology, that Trood and Lewis play on, it was just like, I mean, as a bass player, I was definitely paying attention more to the bass, but in general, just I think at that time especially, a rhythm section in this genre that was pretty unparalleled. You know, I think there's a lot of incredible drummers in the genre, but as far as like, you know, top level drummers and a top level bass player at the same time, maybe then for such poppy math rock, there wasn't too many. I mean, I didn't really know too many poppy math rock bands in 2009 to begin with, you know, so I think it was really, really eye-opening and just like super inspiring, and really was an important part to me of looking at playing bass maybe outside the box of like conventional pop punk or emo or post-hardcore bass playing. And yeah, like it's still a major inspiration to this day, and still completely mind blown at like the complexity of those bass lines and
what they can even do. It's almost like it's just figuring it out as it's going along. It doesn't even seem like it's cohesive or like there's any sort of ideology behind it. It just goes and goes and goes and works.
Like the type of thing that I didn't even bother even trying to understand or replicate or play. It was just, it's in its own league, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like some of the best elements of math rock bands are the rhythm section that can be so locked in together, yet so wild together that they don't even concentrate on what's going on outside of the rhythm section. The guitarists are doing their thing, but everyone's always like almost like pulling and leaning away from each other in a bit. And I feel like I've been lucky enough to see Trood play drums in various other projects, and I'm always like, you don't even look like you either know what you're doing or that you don't care. And that's terrifying that you can be that good and look like that.
Yeah, I think there's so many bands that like maybe don't pull that off quite as well as they do. So I think the fact that they pull it off so effortlessly, like you said, like it's almost like it's just in his own zone, not even really paying attention to what else is going on. Like it's so effortless and organic, and I think that's one of the reasons that really sets them apart.
And horrifically, sickeningly good.
Yeah, it's like hard to match, you know, pretty unparalleled.
I always wonder how these impressive math rock bands, like with individually people who are so technically gifted, come into a studio and write that sort of music. It doesn't like who starts, where does it even begin? As someone who played drums and has literally no idea how to even match any of that, it's crazy. But me and you, moving on to like more live stuff, because me and you are both in the same boat that we haven't and probably will never, and no, let's be real, we'll never see Colour play live. You were telling me last time that you almost went to go and see Aluna George just to see Trood.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us that story? That's a fun story.
I mean, it's not much of a story. I just remember, I don't know, I was like 22 or something, and you know, deeply scouring the concert listings just as a hobby, as I do. And I love arena shows, like any excuse to go to an arena show. And so I was like, okay, I don't even remember who the headliner was or the second of three, but I remember that Aluna George was like first of three at an arena show. And I was like, I should go alone just to watch Trood, like in the nosebleeds for half an hour and then leave. But I didn't. And that's really the story.
You regret it?
I don't know, because this is a great segue into the fact that I did end up seeing him with Tangled Hair 2 years ago at our Tangent. So at least see, and I was, you know, I think we were like sort of hung around the stage for an hour before, so we were right in the front row. Way better visibility than I would have gotten at the Bell Center hockey arena.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I think I'm cool with that. To be real with you, I don't even know a single Aluna George song. I just would have been, you know, to see him. So I got to see him in a way better context, and I got to see Lewis play with Meet Me in St. Louis in 2016 at our Tangent. So that I feel really great about those two. The closest I'll ever get to see, the final iteration of Color. And yeah, I feel good enough about that. And jealous of Benny P for sure.
Yeah, it must have been a pilgrimage of sorts to be at Arctangent and see a lot of those bands that you discovered, at that point, 8, 7, 6 years prior.
Yeah, like I think the two biggest ones for me were that year were Meet Me in St. Louis and Indie Halda. Like Indie Halda was a band I discovered on that after the Post Rock Forum. Just that one release, they kind of disappeared for a while after that. Especially from a release capacity. It was 10 years in between, that release and the release that you guys did. And ironically, they did end up coming to Montreal 2 years after that Arctangent, a year and a half after that Arctangent. So I didn't get to book them, and I did get to see them in a tiny little club. But prior to that Arctangent announced, like, I never thought they'd ever come to North America, let alone they weren't even actively playing shows in the UK. I don't really think before that whole cycle. So yeah, those two were really, really just like teenage bucket list, like never in a million years did I think I'd get to see the completely defunct at that point in St. Louis and the very sporadically active, elusive Indie Helda. So yeah, that was like, and not to mention, like, the only time I've ever seen Toe might be the only time I'll ever see Toe. Like, I could go on for a minute. The only time I'll ever see Viva Belgrado from Spain. Like, what a weekend. What an incredible, outstanding weekend. Pilgrimage, bucket list, the whole thing. I mean, I've been a massive fan of the curation of that festival since they started announcing lineups, and I've just been fantasizing it for years, especially like that 2014 edition. I remember with like This Will Destroy You and Mono. There was just incredible curation, and I think from our genre's perspective, or from my personal taste, I think up to now, like 2016 has sort of been like the peak curation for that kind of sound. So just like the fact that we were able to play that year, and like so many bands I never thought I'd get to see that I will probably never see again, also played that year. It was super special.
Shout out Arctangent. Can't wait to be back in 2021 when the festival season comes back. Moving back onto Colour and what you do with Engulfer, this is a good question to sort of finalize everything off. What inspiration have you taken directly from your time listening to Colour and moving it into your own projects?
Well, this is good because we didn't get to touch on this as much last time, but obviously for me, like, Lewis was a major inspiration as far as bass playing goes. But I also spoke to the people who actually write the music in Engulfer to see what they had to say. And Vincent told me that his big inspiration from Colour, as far as a songwriter goes, is kind of how there aren't really any, like, necessarily any repeating verse, chorus, verse stuff a lot of the time. It's just like one awesome part into the next awesome part. And maybe there's a motif and that sort of recurs, but it isn't traditional songwriting in any capacity. So I think that's, for him, as a young listener, like, that was a big inspiration for him. And the other thing that we had discussed when we were practicing for the first time in 2020 last weekend was just how, like, up front the drums are in that band, kind of like how you've been alluding to, that it's just kind of like it's almost in its own lane and everything's just sort of happening like around it. And I guess for us that's a big inspiration too, like just being a really upfront drum band and letting our virtuistic drummer just like do his thing and like sort of go full throttle, and then sort of like build around that, and having that drum, like the crazy drums sort of being at the forefront of the sound. And I think that's something that they've done better than maybe anyone. And that's been a big inspiration for us too.
Drums to the side, not to the back.
Yeah, drums to the front.
Yeah, right in the center. It is a shame that it seems like no matter how much money gets thrown at Colour, they will never play again. I continuously ask Kev from BSM if he will ever, if he'll ever do that. He said that the only interesting thing about Color was the fact that they had been friends with BSM for a very long time, and then they broke up just after they'd agreed to work with BSM. So that's why the anthology came about. But every time I ask him, come on, please, for me, for you as well, and also for anyone else who would eventually go there, I'd be home if it was just me and you at the gig, to be honest with you. Apparently Color will never come back, and maybe that's a sad, somber tone to end it on.
Well,
but
I'll flip it. I'll flip it and say, I think in a really, just in a rad punk rock way, like, I think that's so indicative of, like, just the way that band existed, like, even prior to them breaking up. Like, nothing ever came out on a label. It was all self-released. It was all, I think, it really feels like the whole band was sort of done, like, completely to the way they wanted it to be done, and on their own terms. And as maybe as unfun as that might be for the fans, I still think from, like, a creative or from, like, a band member perspective, I think that's kind of fucking awesome. And, like,
chaotic and cathartic.
Yeah, and obviously, like, it would be so easy for them to come back theoretically, right? And I'm sure there's some great inside baseball maybe of why that's not happening that maybe we won't discuss here. But I think that's kind of really cool, like, on them, just to, like, sort of do their thing and say, screw it, like, we're just gonna completely burn out and, like, build up this mythicism, like, and that's it. Like, we're gonna do it on our own terms, and I think that's kind of awesome for them, not for us.
No. Well done, Color. You burnt yourself out, but everyone is eternally sad about it.